Hello, this is Narang SSCU 380 UMass Global, September 2022. I'm here to talk about a topic focused on, are we doing enough to protect our personal data? The big question, have government or private industry have done enough to protect our data? As the information is being submitted on a day-to-day basis, how we are making sure that the hackers are not stealing critical and secure data related to our consumer and our citizens. In this presentation, I'll try to cover a few topics, not specific to, but overall focusing on what is personal data and why do we care about it? What are the factors which is driving our citizens to share information on the internet? What are the ethical issues with data and privacies? What are the incidents which pushed us to come up with regulations and checks and balance to make sure that we try to start dealing with these issues? With that, what are the private sectors and government is doing in terms of control, in terms of putting a regulation and policies to make sure that we get control around it? And at the end, who is responsible? Is it consumer, or is it the government, or private companies, or all of them? To start with, what is personal data and why should we care about it? The personal data is basically information which relates to who we are as a human being. This could include our first name, last name. It could include our home addresses. It can include our phone numbers. This can include information related to our medical health, bank accounts, and maybe more than that. This is information which helps us to identify who we are in a more logical and written manner. Now, when it comes to what is personal data, it has broken down into different levels. There are information which is available openly on internet, and we have less of a concern that why this information is being available online. That information comes through your mail. That information comes through people finding us on the LinkedIn or on the Facebook. But then the other side of the data, which is very secure, very personal, call it as PII, that defines our information, which basically has to do with what is our political opinions. Something we are not supposed to say open, something we don't want to be shared without our consensus. Our health data, our sexual orientation, our biometric information. At some point is also that there are some certain information around ethnicity or things we do which we really don't want to share. The reason we care about this information is because all of us wants a safe place. We love our privacy. And every time we share this information, we feel like that we are being watched. That's why there's a biggest idea that when I'm sharing this information, when I'm submitting this information, is it good? Should I be more protective about sharing this information? Do I have right to know that my information will be used? And coming to that, what are the factors which is driving us on day-to-day basis to share more information? What's going on which is pushing us to say, okay, I need more information to be shared on different forums? A research from a source says that there are close to 8 billion people who is our population, and almost 67% of them are connected to internet. These are the people who have some sort of device, either mobile phone or laptop or something, which basically allows them to connect back to the different set of our population, or indirectly to a different sources, and how do we share data. that also includes close to 5 billion people who are using internet on day-to-day basis. This is where this is our population which do and they don't know that what information is being shared, what are the information they are sharing, and they are aware in terms of putting their first name, last name, putting their username, password, putting their birth date, putting their social security number. But then there's other side of the data which they may not be aware is being shared through IoT devices, through sensors, through location awareness, where my mobile knows that where I have been in my entire day. I'm not sharing that information, but my mobile is knowingly and unknowingly sharing that information. Now, there's a research which says that there are 70% of a consumer globally who are willing to share their data if they know that there's a security and convenience there. If I try to elaborate that a little bit better, it's basically that if I feel I'm doing a business with an organization and I feel my information is secure, it's convenience, I won't mind sharing my information. Now, when I say convenience, it could be convenience based on that, yes, I rely on the system, I trust the system, I want to share information, versus my convenience is that, yes, I see my family is using that platform, or I see my friends being on the social network, and that gives me convenience to share information. Now, when it comes to that, what sort of a data we have and how it is being used, it includes everything from our bank information to our paycheck information to our healthcare information to our electricity and all the stuff we are doing on the social media, sharing information with our friends and with our relatives. Many times, this sharing information leads into data breach. Data breach is basically where specific companies who are storing our information could not secure our data enough, and there was a reason for hackers or some other ways for people to get into and steal information. Looking through this slide, you can see that the idea of data breach does not just hit one sector of industry or just one sector of capability, but it impacts how we float our information on the internet. Many of information could be searched through, shared through different sources. Sometimes it's being shared through the way we submit information, and sometimes this information is even being used to send spam and other stuff. One of the examples which I'll share is that when Yahoo had a breach back in 2013, there were records which were stolen, and many companies use that record to basically log into Yahoo accounts and try to basically do procurement, buy stuff, but also steal the contact information from a mass communication and from marketing point of view. Now, as this is happening, there's always this question that until somebody doesn't tell us what that means, how do we know about this? And this is where the whole idea comes in, that what is whistleblower? The way they're supporting us, telling that the information is being shared, is it right? Is it wrong? For many, they may feel that, well, for me, it's a new set of information because I never knew that I could share my information. And there are others who would say that, no, sharing this information or this whistleblower thing can actually impact our national security. It can put many people on the risk. And this is where the whole idea around morality and ethical comes to a question where there's not a single answer. While many say that, yes, this is a good thing to do, others would say that, no, this was not the right thing to do. I wish I could have an answer. Why I agree with some of them, I don't agree with others. Now, when it comes to data and privacy issue, what are the reasons which is causing that problem and why it's becoming that prominent? There are many reasons. And if I try to compile a list, it will be a long list. But I felt that there are specific 9 reasons why this data and privacy is becoming a bigger issue. The number of devices connected, the number of transactions we are doing, the number of information is being floating, that is increasing a growth in data. which means that technologically, the way we are trying to make sure that how do we structure the data is challenged on daily basis because the data is keep increasing. The cost of maintaining data is keep going up, which means the consumer, the industry, the private sector, the government organization who's basically trying to store the data, they are also struggling with the cost associated to that. Managing platforms, managing backups around it, managing privacy, legal issues around it, running resources who can run machine learning and data modeling to understand what the data means. One of the other issue here is also the security and vulnerabilities. As we are collecting more data, the number of security incidents and vulnerabilities are keep growing. And this has to do with us not investing in the right platform, us not investing in the right security initiatives and projects. And that leads into basically having our data sitting in a cloud, but in a very insecure fashion. The other issue is data classification, which is broken down into personal information and PII. When I'm sharing information, I don't have a clear understanding of how my data is being used, why it's being used, when it's being used. That's one thing. Second thing is when I'm sharing my information, like my first name, last name, email address, phone number, I'm very much comfortable sharing that. But the PII information becomes something different, which is my social security number, my health histories. That's where I feel like there should be an awareness which can help our citizens and our consumers to understand that they are supposed to share that information or not. If they're sharing that information, how that is supposed to be used. Extending to that, all the IoT devices, all the mobile have, that is also adding so much information back into this privacy issue where we don't even know that how much information is being collected. Another simple example is Alexa at our home, or Google or Apple Pod. Are they listening to us? Are they collecting information? When they're collecting information, how that information is being used. As a consumer, what options I have to restrict the data? Am I tech savvy to try to get down the configuration and disable it? Or is it as simple as unplugging the power so that I don't have to worry about it? As technology getting more ingrained into houses where we have sensors, cameras, information being captured in our microwaves and our ovens and our refrigerators, is it good information? Is it information we allowed to share? Is this information which we have consent? Do we have control to see what that information being shared? That having no knowledge about this adds to that privacy. And the last and main thing is that not having that awareness, not having what's being done there, that triggers a human error, which means sometime information is being shared with the platform when it was supposed to be. Sometime information is being shared just from a convenience point of view or for trying to find a better deals. One of the examples I shared, my friend who was looking for a great deal on a golf club, he'll end up sharing his bank account information and something on a site which was not as secure. Luckily, nothing happened, but there was a time when he was a little bit worried that how his information is being used and how he made a mistake sharing that information on a site which could be unprotected. These are the same things which basically leads into data and privacy issue. Now, when it comes to how do we take an approach to take this whole ethical dilemma around issues and how data is being captured without telling us, how information is being reported through systems and also through our whistleblower, the conversation always comes around that what it means from going from our dilemma to ethics. How do we make sure that we take an approach where basically our ethical dilemma around there's a big brother watching us. Data is being collected, which I am not aware. I don't know how my information will be used. I don't have visibility into how my information is being shared beyond just that single vendor, single provider. That dilemma, every time I'm filling up a form, every time I'm filling up credit card information, that dilemma still stays there. Use of a technology. Am I supposed to use this app? Am I supposed to use that app? Is my mobile device secure? I got this notification on my laptop to run a cleanup software. It's free. I'm supposed to do that? Having that dilemma, which hits us on day-to-day basis, creates this whole privacy minefield where, well, I have intention to do things, but I don't trust the system, or I want to trust the system, but I don't know how my information is being used. And at the end is basically that, where are the ethics and privacy policies, laws, structure from a companies? When I'm sharing information with a specific vendor, are they using for the right reasons? That dilemma which exists today need to take a shift going from a compliance-driven to ethics-driven, where basically we need to start challenging our system, our structure, our policies, our regulation from an ethics point of view, which means that when that information is being structured, who's at the most risk? Regardless, I'm a consumer, I'm a citizen, when I'm collecting information or when I'm sharing information, there should be this common sense which pushes that who's at a risk? What is our data privacy and digital ethics? Am I aware of what data is being collected and how it will be used? Will I be notified when a data breach happened or my information is being transferred from one consumer to another consumer or one provider to another provider? Having awareness that is something which helps us to basically take it our dilemma and to start making more ethical approach. And last and the least is that security and control. If my data is secure, I have control to make sure that I know when my data is being used, how it's being used, how it's being shared. That itself gives me a bigger sense of comfort and understanding that my information is being used for the right reason. Now, the bigger question comes in this whole mix is who is responsible to protect the data? I wish there should be an easy answer, but it is not. There have been many surveys which points a question towards that. Is it the individual who's responsible for that? Is it the brand who's responsible for that? Or is it the government? There are many reports who dictates and drives that consumers should have more knowledge to understand that why I'm sharing this information, why this information is being asked. If I'm not comfortable, I should not provide that information. They should have that structure. But on the other hand, if you look at the brand dictates and drive that they need to have a better checks and balance controls to make sure that when the information is being shared, a consumer or individual can understand that how do I manage my data. Government has been doing a lot of work around putting regulations and policies and all that stuff. But are they doing enough? We don't know. The way I feel like in this whole thing is, sorry, that the technology is evolving faster than any policy, any system, any control, or even regulation can place it. It almost feels like that we are doing a catch-up game with putting a fixes when the issue's already happened. Now, talking about that, what is being done to solve it, especially from private sector point of view, from a regulation point of view, from a government point of view, many things are being done to challenge service providers, these brand companies, these solution and service and social platform, to make sure that when they are securing information, it is secure, it is restricted, it is used, it is collected based on the guidelines and protection system. But is that enough? This picture shows that the European government has been focusing on data protection since 1984. And every few years, they have been passing a law which has helped to get to the point where GDPR is taking place, starting from last 4 years. If reading through this, it was not just an idea around understanding that how the act is being passed, but also that how do we make sure that there are privacy principles being done at international level. So the data protection helps to secure the European countries, but at the same time, it does not hurt their ability to do business with other countries, share information, which is more relevant. Now, this is more like a Europe point of view around it. When it comes to what are the things being done from data breaches and from regulation point of view, this diagram made me surprised that the data breach launches and when there has been a launch of regulation is almost like a catch-up. Every time there's an incident that triggers an idea, that challenges the idea that do we have all the checks and balance? Do we have all the controls? Do we have all the privacy policies? Are we following the right ethics? And how do we make sure that we have a privacy regulation to support that? And then there's always a regulation to follow with that. Almost like a catch-up game. But a lot has been done from the government point of view, which has been challenging private companies to make sure that they come and they talk about why information is being shared. All the recent incidents where Facebook and Google had to go and talk about that how their platforms are not secure. They need to have more secure. The checks and balance they're putting from last 3 years to make sure that information is secure, or at least there's a consent that information is being shared, helped to gain that momentum. And I must say that as much as anybody would blame regulation, I feel like that regulation is helping at least to challenge the companies, not just go above and beyond. In my career, I work in IT, and I spend most of the time talking to my team and my stakeholder, making sure that we have a secure data information we have, and we understand our legal and compliance and retention around it. Keeping that in mind is I am doing that intentionally to secure data at one place, but also make sure that I stay aligned with regulations. When it comes to things we have done in the US, there has been many things taken to make sure that we secure our information when it comes to what information means from a structure point of view, but also health insurance, that how we're collecting information, how it's being shared. SOX has been a bigger system where basically making sure that when the system change is done, it's properly documented. I, as a service provider, can collect the data, but if I'm not following SOX and I'm making changes in the data without getting any special approval or document, that removes the liability on me. But as soon as I start following SOX, it makes me more accountable to make sure that a checks and balance and a regulation is being followed to ensure that I'm compliant. There are many of such personal data protection bill has been passed. Some of them have been state-based, some of them have been country-based. California have recently launched many regulations to ensure that there's a protection regulation to ensure that from a consumer point of view, from a provider's point of view, there are rules regulation which forces them to follow their checks and balance and controls. Always question comes in that is, well, if it's all about the ethic, why does ethic matters? Why do we care about that ethics? I'm sharing my information. If a vendor doesn't want to follow the ethics, or if I don't care about my ethics, what that means. The way it's being structured, that is, the ethics is not just about my data is being shared and I'm done with it. It's basically they're following things which basically make sure that we care about data ethics in terms of data breaches. Every time there's a data breaches, how do we make sure that that's converted into some sort of a fix or regulation which helps us to avoid that? What are the ethical practices are in place for systems to make sure that information is secure? What is my data and how it is being used? Data analysis, that data analysis is being done for the purpose which was collected, or it's being done for more than that. Me as a consumer, I have access to understand that how my information is being shared. The whole area in a search engine, that every time I search something on search engine, suddenly that starts showing up on all my devices. I remember a few years ago, I was looking for a diaper on a google.com, and suddenly it starts showing up on my Facebook, on my YouTube, on my Amazon. A search engine is an idea to just search information, or it's becoming more like a marketing a platform which is forcing me to make sure that I can see something 50 times and then I start buying it. These issues basically challenges that why we should have a data ethics and why it matters. Now, it's easy to say that what is data ethics and how it should matter and how do we care about it. There are many frameworks which try to define that what should be the principle, what are the actions we take either as a consumer or even as a provider, and what processes should be in place to structure that. To break it down, I think the biggest thing is that when we start looking at data ethics, having a principle that transparency, being respectful, beneficial, and fair is very critical. As I'm collecting information, as a provider, I should be very careful that I'll be very transparent that how information is being collected, how it's being used. I will be respectful where if I feel like there's a certain data not to be shared or should not be shared. When the data analysis is being done in terms of AI, machine learning, or even data modeling, it should be done from a beneficial point of view to support the consumer, not to take an advantage out of it. And at the end, this data should be supporting us to basically build a more fair offering, more fair approach, more fair structure around how do we really want to build and offer services. When it comes to action, it's all about that as a consumer or as a provider, I should be knowing and defining what is the purpose of data collection. Data identification in terms of am I collecting information which is very generic information, or I'm trying to collect information which is very secure. And the reason I feel that is very critical is because the critical information which is very secure to me should be only done through multi-factor authentication or through secure systems, so that way I feel a little bit more at ease that yes, my information is being collected through a very secure systems. Data storage, as so many data providers are coming up and they're building data storages from Splunk to Microsoft to Redshift from Amazon and Google, our understanding that how data is being stored and used and shared is very critical. There was a time when I learned that Google has a capability to basically take down the breaker data and break down that into 8 different data sets, and that is being stored in the different data centers. That gave me a confidence that yes, Google has a very good ability to and availability to store the data, because if one data center is being hijacked or something, the hacker will not have information for my entire data. But still, my concern is that as data security and storage is being there, anybody who have access to my username password can still access the data. Analysis and modeling, I think that goes to the purpose of the data, that when I start doing analysis around the data, I should be very clear around that analysis is being done respectfully, beneficial, and with a full transparency to our users. There are new features coming up on our devices every day, and some of that is done with the data I am sharing through the devices, knowingly, unknowingly. Having that understanding that things are being done based on my interests, based on my choices, gives me a little bit more open and visibility that yes, this is done because I did such and such action. Use and transmit includes basically idea around that when my data is being shared and by transmitted, I should have a trust that systems are secure, but also I should be notified that my information is being shared and am I allowed to share or not. Preserve and dispose basically challenges our idea around that. If I'm not going to use the data, I should still preserve it or dispose of? Another example would be that I bought services from a consumer. They have my information, I have been using that, and now I have decided that, okay, I want to close my account with that and move to a different provider. Do they have right to preserve my data, to dispose of my data? If they're preserving my data, I should know that how the data will be used, or should I have right to say that since I closed my account, a vendor should not be allowed to use my data. When it comes to process, it's all about compliance, that how we are being compliant on information being stored, shared, and analysis. Privacy is all about that. As a consumer, I should have access to where my information is being shared or not. And so forth goes into access control in terms of how my data is being stored and shared, monitoring, and then retention and purge. When it comes to following a simple ethics, one thing which is very interesting is that there are few things which we cannot ignore, and we are very tied to it. Even we know if we don't know about this, and that is the idea around people creating information and sharing information. They are accessing network which allows their data to be shared and being stored at a different technology solutions and platforms. And from there, the whole idea starts that how do I take my ethics in a more legal governance point of view? So I have a process structure in place to support a structure or environment which allows me to have rather than having a compliance driven structure to an ethics driven structure. Thank you for listening. I hope you enjoy this presentation. Thanks for your time.